Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Advancement Center, and welcome back to the reading of The Magic of Life by Robert Young. And we continue with chapter 44. Bill awoke early. The sun had not yet risen, but as he jumped up, he was completely alert and his eyes were wide open. His sudden movement disturbed and frightened Suzanne a little. "What is it, Bill?" she asked. "I've got it. I know what Simon did to me yesterday. He made me sell my boat," said Bill. "He arranged a loan. I put up the boat as collateral, and then before the day was out, he bought the loan security off me. I was looking good for cash, but I've just realized that I've got plenty of cash, no boat, and no way to pay it back. I thought I was doing well." Suzanne laughed and said, "Go back to sleep, Bill. Simon doesn't want your boat." "No, this is very serious," said Bill. "If I don't play it by the rules, I won't know what comes next. I've got to get up there and I've got to have a piece of paper to say that I don't agree with the last transaction. I've got by sunrise to do it." "Oh, don't be silly," said Suzanne. "No, I've got to do this, Suzanne," continued Bill. "It sounds crazy, but if I don't play it out, I won't know what to do if the same situation comes up again. You've got no idea what happens if you try to cancel everything." Suzanne looked at Bill seriously and said, "I suppose you're right, Bill. You know, I think it's time you brought Willem in on the scene." "Yes, I haven't seen him around for a while," said Bill, "but I think you're right. First of all, I've got to get over there and drop this piece of paper off into Simon. I'll just slip it under his door and then I'll get back and go out in the boat. I've got to do that. That's my life, and I realize that now." "Okay, Bill," said Suzanne, "whatever you've got to do, but remember, we're working together." Bill smiled. "That's great. I'll show you how to fish one day." "No, I'm serious," said Suzanne. "We're working together. We'll make things work. You wait and see. When you get back, I'll tell you more about what happened with Carmel." Bill felt a bit strange. "I'm sorry, Suzanne. I almost forgot. I'm so caught up in my own stuff." "But you've got to be, Bill," said Suzanne. "That's what you do, and you can't change what you do. But together, we'll make a difference." Bill smiled and gave her a kiss. "We're already making a difference." He jumped out of bed and quickly got ready to deliver his piece of paper that rejected the offer that had been accepted the previous night. Suzanne was bright and felt quite clear. She could see exactly what was happening with Bill, and she understood that he had to go through the procedure to feel exactly where he was. But her clarity had grown so much over the last few days, and she had no problems looking past what was normally a veil in front of her. She could see so far, and it was like even around the house, the walls did not exist. She knew that she could lie in bed a few more moments because the children were still asleep. In the past, she would have had to jump up and go and check on them, but right at this moment, all she wanted to do was savor the moment and feel the clarity. It seemed to be expanding her life into areas that she could not even imagine. Suzanne felt so positive about the day and so positive about everything that had to be done. She still had time to see more into what else could be done. She could see further into where the family would end up, where they would live, what adventures they would have. She also could see a totally different house around her. She did not wonder where the house was or whether it belonged to her. She just knew that it was her home. She did not look outside to see whether it was on the island, but she was happy with what she felt and what she observed. She could see the children playing in a beautiful area, an area just the same as where they currently played. This time, though, she could see the fairies that Jamie had played with, and she saw other people around. She saw Simeon standing high in the background, looking down. It was all so clear. It was not simply a picture in her imagination. It was a clear vision, and it was here now, and she enjoyed it in the moment. As she started to venture around, she realized that she had actually moved from her small bedroom out into the backyard. She found herself walking around in amongst the scene that had appeared to her. As soon as she realized this, there was a sudden movement, and she felt herself jolt upwards in bed, and there was Jamie standing at the foot of the bed looking at her. "Oh, Jamie," she said, "Mommy was having a dream." "You were playing with my fairies, Mommy," said Jamie. Suzanne smiled and pulled herself out of bed. She picked up Jamie and gave her a big cuddle and then carried her through the house and into Jamie's bedroom. They had just sat down on the bed when the other two children woke and sat upright. Suzanne thought to herself it was amazing how quickly Martha had grown in the last few days. She seemed to be more like a 4-year-old and was coming along in leaps and bounds. Samuel still seemed to be younger than Jamie, but Martha had suddenly overtaken him. She did not seem quite as mature as Jamie, but almost. Martha's eyes sparkled. There was something special about her, and Suzanne knew it, although it had not yet come to light at this stage as it had with Jamie. As Suzanne gazed at her three special children, she suddenly saw them about 5 years older. They were all sitting on a lounge, very well dressed, a lounge that was quite different to Suzanne's. She had never seen this one before. Through the windows behind them, she could see the ocean, but it did not look to be the same ocean she could see out of her window. She wondered where she had been taken. As soon as that intensity grew within her, that inquisitive nature of hers, the picture disappeared, only to be replaced by an image of Bill climbing on board his fishing boat while thinking of Suzanne. Suzanne smiled and connected with Bill. She said out loud, "Hello, Bill. I can see you climbing on board. Have a good day. The children send their love." She saw Bill look around and smile to herself. She knew exactly how he was feeling. It was like a voice coming from nowhere. Jamie waved and said, "Bye, Daddy." Martha quickly responded also, "Bye, Daddy." Samuel did not understand as he looked around with eyes wide open, searching for Bill. Suzanne loved this game and she loved having this advantage. She thought to herself that she could get used to this. It was brilliant and a great game. She swiftly stood up and said, "Come on, children. We're all going to get cleaned up and have some breakfast." They all jumped out of bed and headed out to the kitchen. Chapter 45. The news of the Sandra D and the capture of those who were holding the Sandra D and some of its passengers to ransom soon spread through Norwich. Elizabeth Willis sighed with relief. She knew that the aftermath of the cyclone had put a lot of strain on people in Norwich and that businesses were suffering badly. She knew that stocks were low and that her position on the town council was under much strain. She had relied heavily on her husband Michael and even more heavily on Henry Olson. Surprisingly, though, she'd had the greatest help from her old friend Willem. She had kept Willem's secret for a long time, and she had always known Willem's true identity was Heinrich Smithers. She had kept the secret and the records away from the Olsons for many years. So when Willem had walked in with the news about the Sandra D, Elizabeth experienced two different feelings, one of relief and one of friendship. The feeling of friendship was so deep that she had no idea how to express it. With the relief of everybody being safe, her emotions let go and she wept so profusely that Willem did not know what to do. He thought she was having a breakdown. Elizabeth walked over to Willem and with tears rolling down her cheeks, she put her arms around him and said, "Thank you so much for being such a wonderful friend." Willem felt deep emotions begin to stir within his own being. He had not realized how closely he was connected with Elizabeth. The many battles he had fought with Michael had kept them apart. After several minutes, Elizabeth pulled back from Willem and said, "I'm so sorry, Willem, for what happened. I'm so appreciative for who you are and how you have remained who you are and I'm going to do something about all of the things that Michael and I have done. I'm going to clear that name and clear the way for the return of your ownership. And I know that now that old Edward had gone, Henry will help me. Willem's eyes lit up. He had thought he'd lost everything and was prepared to lose everything. But here was an opportunity for him to have access to property and funds that he knew he could help people with. Do you think this is possible, Elizabeth? He asked. Elizabeth stopped crying and looked Willem straight in the eye. It's not only possible, it will happen, and it will happen today. Today? Asked Willem. Yes, said Elizabeth, today. It will happen today, and it must happen today. For some reason, we must put everything right today, otherwise nothing will feel right. It's strange that you should say that, said Willem. I said nearly the same thing to Mary this morning. I told her that everything has to be put right, but I didn't know that it would be today. I got up this morning and knew things had to be changed. And I knew that too, said Elizabeth. I think there's a big change happening, Willem. I don't know whether it was the cyclone or whether the change was already happening and the cyclone just helped it along. But the change has occurred in me and has happened to Michael. You have a look at him. He's running around doing all sorts of things. He's actually getting ready to go fishing today. Well, well, said Willem. I can't remember the last time Michael climbed into a fishing boat. You probably wouldn't remember the last time Michael climbed anywhere. He's virtually been stuck in that chair for the last 10 years, said Elizabeth. I haven't seen him sit down since the cyclone, so something amazing is happening. I know I feel really, really good, and now that I've had that big cry, I feel a whole lot better. I tell you what, Willem, today will be a day to remember. So get on with you and let me get on with my work. Willem laughed and gave Elizabeth a pat on the back. Well, you're a beautiful person, but you're also tough. Elizabeth laughed and gave him a bit of a push. Go on, off with you. I'm on my way, said Willem. I'll talk to you this evening. You'll probably see me before that, said Elizabeth. I've got a lot to do and a lot of people to see. So get on your way and go and see everybody because I think you'll be going back home very soon. Yes, I have a feeling that I'm needed elsewhere at the moment, said Willem. I think we've got all of the problems out of the way, and I think the place is back on its feet. The town still feels like it has a little reluctance to move, but I suppose you'll fix that today, Elizabeth. I certainly will, said Elizabeth. Now get on with you. Willem laughed and quickly turned and walked out the door. Elizabeth walked back to her desk where she picked up the phone and rang Michael. Michael answered after only a couple of rings and sounded a little breathless. Michael, this is Elizabeth. I've just been talking to Willem, and I've told him I'll fix everything up concerning all that we've done in the past regarding Heinrich Smithers. There was silence on the other end. So before you go fishing, she continued, I want you to prepare another ruling stating that you will allow submission of evidence that was withheld at the previous hearing. By the time you come home this afternoon, I want you to look at all the details and sign them off as true and real so that all of Willem's property and all of his funds can be released today. The other end of the line remained silent. Elizabeth asked, Are you there, Michael? Yes, I'm here, replied Michael. You caught me off guard. This is important, Michael, said Elizabeth. I understand it is, said Michael. It's just that I've never thought about it. But now that you've said it, well, why didn't we do it before? Because neither of us wanted to admit that we had done the dirty work of Edward Olson. And you realize as soon as we do this, we'll have to withdraw from the Olson coffers, and Henry will have to do that, said Elizabeth. Yeah, I understand that, said Michael. If it didn't belong to him, then it's not a problem. And besides, Mary would totally agree with what we're doing. That's good, said Elizabeth. Michael responded. You know what, Elizabeth? I'm just finding out a few things, and one of the most important things I've just discovered is that I really love you, and you're really not a bad old stick after all. This shocked Elizabeth because everything had been very formal between her and Michael. She smiled to herself before replying, "Enough of this old stick business, or I'll give you some stick when you get home." Michael laughed. "Good to hear the old Elizabeth back again. I'll fix that paperwork up and you can collect it from the chambers. I'll probably only be away for a couple of hours, so I'll see you this afternoon. I love you, Elizabeth." Elizabeth choked a little and struggled with her words before replying, "Yes, and I love you too, Michael." She could hear Michael in the background just before he hung up yelling, "Yippee!" She knew then that she really loved the man on the other end of the phone. Chapter 46. Mary had decided to move in and live with Henry. They were about to be married, and she had missed him so much while he was away working during the cyclone. Henry was happy with that decision, but he was still very busy. He had left Mary with the job of packing and had sent his dear friend Andrew over to help her. Willem had decided to get out of their way and thought he would take the news personally to Elizabeth and was pleased that he had. When he left the council building, he glanced up and down the street and wondered how they would repair the damage from the cyclone. Just then the solution came to mind. He knew the entire crew who had gone out on the Jeremy was able to do this sort of work, and he knew that somehow they would be able to gather sufficient people to help with this recovery work. They did not have the expertise on the island, but all of those men who had traveled everywhere and who lived in the night moving contraband around, those who knew the law backwards, those who knew finance, and those who were simple hard workers, all resided somewhere in the hidden areas of the island. He knew that he could fish them out through Willie and John. Elizabeth would not have had time to look at how that could be done, so Willem thought he would delve a little deeper and see what he could do. He headed back to the house that had once been Henry's home and which up until now had belonged to Mary. It was now to become his home. Mary had given it back to him that very morning, and they had made a start with all the packing. He knew Andrew Kelly had had a lot to do with Willie and John Broltage. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he thought there may be some connection that he could use, so he headed back home. He enjoyed feeling the sun and the gentle breeze as he walked along. It was a beautiful day. Willem had often wondered how these bits of information came to him. The thoughts about the Broltages and about the men on the Jeremy had seemed to come out of nowhere. He had then realized that this information must have been given to him because he had no other knowledge of it. He didn't know who was on the Jeremy, but he knew there must have been a lot of men to pull off what they had done. In any case, Andrew was in the middle of it all, so he should be able to reveal a little more than what Willem could gather from nowhere. Andrew was walking down the driveway as Willem arrived at Mary's. He waved to Willem. "Hi, Willem. Happy to have you back again." "Do you have a moment, Andrew?" asked Willem. "For you, Willem, I have more than a moment. What can I do for you?" He said, Andrew. "It's not what you can do for me, Andrew. It's what you can tell me," replied Willem. "Ah, well," said Andrew, "I can tell you anything and everything. So what would you like to know?" "The episode with the Sandra D and your discussions with the men on board the Jeremy that involved Willie and John, didn't it?" "That's right," answered Andrew. "They're the pair who always managed to get things for us when we needed things," asked Willem. "That's right," said Andrew. "I was just thinking, do you think they could gather together enough men to start doing repair work around here?" asked Willem. Andrew laughed. "Well, I think Harvey might be able to tell you a little more about that. Actually, I think he can tell you a lot about that." Willem smiled. Well, I haven't spoken to Harvey in years. He's a hard character." "I wouldn't say hard, but he's very influential with a tough exterior," said Andrew. Willem shook his head. I'm not sure that's the direction I should go in, Andrew. Well, how about you go and call on either Willie or John, or we can get them on the radio if you need, suggested Andrew. No, face to face is what I need, thanks, said Willem. How do I find them? Well, you know the boat shed, asked Andrew. You'll find Willie there most of the time, although I'm not sure where he is at the moment. I think they're heading back on the Jeremy. They've headed around the island to where John hangs out. I've never been around there myself. It seems to be just a bit of a beach shack, I think. John doesn't seem to be doing much around there. Probably the best thing to do is call in to the boat shed. Willem looked up. Okay, thanks, Andrew. But you say John is around the other side and we can get him on the radio. That's right, said Andrew. Will you back will you be back at your post at the plaza later on today? Asked Willem. I will, answered Andrew. I'll be there, and if you'd like to call in, we can give John a call on the radio. Fine, just after lunch, said Willem. I'll be there then. Okay, said Andrew. All the best to you, Willem. I'll be back later to collect the other things for Mary. As he reached the end of the driveway, Willem noticed the old vehicle parked around the side of the house. He wondered where it had come from. He looked to see if there was anybody around, but he could not see anyone. He decided to go inside, and as he walked through the door, there, sitting having a cup of tea with Mary, was old Harvey. Willem's mouth dropped open. He couldn't believe it. He was sure that it was Harvey, but he had not seen him for so long. He could not figure out why Harvey would be at his house. He walked closer, and as he did, Harvey looked up and greeted him. Ah, there you are, Willem. About time you got here. I've been sitting here waiting, and your lovely daughter here has looked after me and treated me like a gentleman, or should I say a king. I've had the best of everything while you've been off gallivanting around the town. Harvey, I haven't seen you for so long. I didn't even know whether it was you or not, said Willem, still taken aback. Well, I'm a little worse for the wear, I suppose, but still holding in there, still managing to do what I've got to do, replied Harvey. I thought I'd drop around and see you about something. I need a bit of a spell, and the only person I know who could handle what I do is you. Willem looked at Harvey and frowned. He asked, What do you mean? Well, you always did it in the past, said Harvey. I just hung around and filled out the pieces of paper, and really everything I do now is what you prepared. You and Sally, of course. The mention of Sally's name brought joy to Willem's heart. Yes, they were good. Yes, they were good times, Harvey. Good times, Harvey. Good times. So what do you want to do? He asked. Well, Willem, said Harvey, I just had a look through our town, and there's really nobody who knows what to do to fix it up. I thought I might take a break from what I'm doing as clerk and get back into the building and construction game. I don't know where I'm going to get any people from to work for me, but I thought I might get back into it. Besides, with the town needing it, I think I can pick up an extra dollar or two. Willem shook his head and said, Well, you're certainly a character. You've got good in your heart, but you also need a quid, don't you? Well, that's what it's all about, said Harvey. You can have a good life, but you've got to eat. Yeah, that's good, said Willem. I'm just not too sure of my movements at the moment. I've got to go and chase up a few people, but I will be back. It's funny, I had a feeling that the men associated with the rescue by the Jeremy have got some of the talents that we need to get this place back in order. Well, I just released them all, said Harvey. They're all on their way to straightening out their lives. I released them into the custody of Willie. Is that right? Asked Willem. It's a small world. I think I can do a deal with Willie to get them back here. I'm sure you can, said Harvey, particularly if you're carrying the authority of the town clerk. Not so quick, said Willem. How about I get back to you in a couple of days? It has to be today, said Harvey. Everything has to be straightened out today. Not you too, said Willem. Elizabeth Willis just said the same thing to me, and Mary said the same thing to me this morning. You're all a bit pushy. Well, it's just timing, answered Harvey. That's just the way it is. If you can't do it, then I'll have to get someone else. I'm sure that at this point in time, it would be to your advantage to hold the position. I think there are a few things happening that may put you back where you feel more comfortable with the town. Why do you say that? Asked Willem. It's just a feeling, replied Harvey. I don't feel any opposition to you at all now. That probably all went with old Olson. But beside that, the town has always needed you, and it has always needed Sally. But Sally has gone, and you're still around, and it feels right. So what's your decision? Well, maybe this afternoon, said Willem. I won't be around this afternoon, said Harvey, and repeated, what's your decision? Willie squinted as he looked at Harvey. Willem, as he looked at Harvey, you've always had this talent, haven't you? Sure, said Harvey, but come on, what's your decision? Willem looked at Mary, and she winked at him. He laughed and said, you two are in on this together, aren't you? I know where you got your information from. Well, all's fair, you know, said Harvey, and again asked, what's your decision? I don't have much to say, do I? Asked Willem. You have one say, said Harvey, so say it. Okay, you're on, said Willem. Harvey immediately picked up his briefcase, opened it, and pulled out pre-prepared paperwork, all ready for signature. Just sign here, Willem, and the job's yours. You're amazing, said Willem. How many other pieces of paper do you have in that ready for signature? In there ready for signature? Quite a few, answered Harvey. I'll leave the briefcase here with you. I know you won't do much for a couple of days, so I'll stand in for you until you're ready to start. I need at least 2 days, said Willem. I have to go to the other side of the island and I have to give some very critical advice to some people. And I'd also like to organize Willie to help us in our recovery project. Okay, the job's yours, said Harvey. I'm the relief and I'm relieved. I'll hold the office and begin planning what needs to happen around the town. I'll talk to Elizabeth and Henry and we'll see what plan we can come up with. I look forward to working with you, said Willem. I'm really looking forward to it. Willem's heart started to lighten up a little more. It had been heavy over the years as he had to hold in so much without saying anything, but now he was starting to feel the freedom. And that concludes chapter 46. And when I return, I will begin with chapter 47 of The Magic of Life. And until then, as always, I wish you a perfect life, perfect health, and a magic future. Thank you.